belongings in a methodical manner, and without the slightest inconvenience to Miss Lovel, and then seated himself next the door, upon the farther side of the carriage. Clarissa looked at him rather anxiously, wondering whether they two were to be solitary companions throughout the whole of that long night journey. She had no prudish horror of such a position, only a natural girlish shyness in the presence of a stranger. The traveller was a man of about 30, tall, broad-shouldered, with long arms, and powerful-looking hands, ungloved, and bronzed a little by sun and wind. There was the same healthy bronze upon his face, Clara perceived, when he took off his hat and hung it up above him. Rather a handsome face, with a long straight nose, dark blue eyes with thick brown eyebrows, a well-cut mouth and chin, and a thick thatch of crisp brown hair waving round a broad, intelligent-looking forehead. The firm, full upper lip was half hidden by a carefully trained moustache, and in his dress and bearing the stranger had altogether a military air. One could fancy him a cavalry soldier. That bare muscular hand seemed made to grasp the massive hilt of a sabre. His expression was grave and a little proud, Clarissa thought; and unused as she was to lonely wanderings in this outer world, she felt somehow that this man was a gentleman, and that she needed be troubled by no fear that he would make his presence in any way unpleasant to her, let their journey together last as long as it would. She sank back into her corner with a feeling of relief. It would have been more agreeable for her to have had the carriage to herself, but if she must needs have a companion, there was nothing obnoxious in this one. For about an hour they sped on in silence. This evening train was not exactly an express, but it was a tolerably quick train, and the stoppages were not frequent. The dull grey twilight melted into a fair tranquil night. The moon rose early, and the quiet English landscape seemed very fair to Clarissa Lovel in that serene light. She watched the shadowy fields flitting past, here and there a still pool, or a glimpse of running water; beyond, the sombre darkness of wooded hills; and above that dark background a calm starry sky. Who shall say what dim poetic thoughts were in her mind that night as she looked at these things? Life was so new to her, the future such an unknown country, a paradise perhaps, or a drear gloomy waste, across which she must travel with bare bleeding feet. How should she know? She only knew that she was going home to a father who had never loved her, who had deferred the day of her coming as long as it was possible for him decently to do so. The traveller in the opposite corner of the carriage glanced at Miss Lovel now and then as she looked out of the window. He could just contrive to see her profile, dimly lighted by the flickering oil lamp. A very perfect profile, he thought; a forehead that was neither too high nor too low; a small aquiline nose; a short upper lip, and the prettiest mouth and chin in the world. It was just a shade too pensive now, the poor little mouth, he thought pityingly, and he wondered what it was like when it smiled. And then he began to arrange his lines for winning the smile he wanted so much to see from those thoughtful lips. It was, of course, for the gratification of the idlest, most vagabond curiosity that he was eager to settle this question; but then on such a long dreary journey a man may be forgiven for a good deal of idle curiosity. He wondered who his companion was, and how she came to be travelling alone, so young, so pretty, so much in need of an escort. There was nothing in her costume to hint at poverty, nor does poverty usually travel in first-class carriages. She might have her maid lurking somewhere in the second class, he said to himself. In any case, she was a lady; he had no shadow of doubt about that. She was tall, above the ordinary height of women. There was a grace in the long flowing lines of her figure more striking than the beauty of her face. The long slim throat, the sloping shoulder, not to be disguised even by the clumsy folds of a thick shawl, these the traveller noted in a lazy contemplative mood, as he lolled in his corner, meditating an easy opening for a conversation with his fair fellow voyager. He let some little time slip by in this way, being a man to whom haste was almost unknown. This idle artistic consideration of Miss Lovel's beauty was a quiet kind of enjoyment for him. She, for her part, seemed absorbed in watching the landscape, a very commonplace English landscape in the gentleman's eyes, and was in no way disturbed by his placid admiration. He had a heap of newspapers and magazines thrown pell-mell into the empty seat next him, and arousing himself with a faint show of effort presently, he began to turn these over with a careless hand. The noise of his movements startled Clarissa. She looked across at him, and their eyes met. This was just what he wanted. He had been curious to see her eyes. They were hazel, and very beautiful, completing the charm of her face. "May I offer you some of these things?" he said. "I have a reading lamp in one of my bags, which I will light for you in a moment. I won't pledge myself for your finding the magazine."